Hello, everybody. Welcome on this very, very exciting special day. I'm going to keep this introduction short. I'm assuming no one would be here if they didn't know exactly who the fuck Michael Cunningham is. It is an honor, a pleasure, a privilege, a joy to have him here on the launch day of this magnificent new novel. If you haven't yet read it, you should go home tonight, read it, and expect to cry until dawn. It's a beauty. It's really a beauty. You're not here to listen to me. Here's Michael Cunningham. And interviewed by Billy Hough, punk rock musician, Ulysses seminar leader, friend, and foe.
Thank you. There you go.
Wow. Everybody I love in the whole world is here. That is so fantastic and just a little bit terrifying. But wow, thank you all.
Everybody loves you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And you know, I feel like Billy Hough and I have been having an ongoing conversation for about the last 20 years.
Easily.
So this is just the most recent installment.
It's true.
Yeah, and ordinarily most of you can get it for free anytime you want, but
Yeah, exactly. Usually everybody, let me just keep going. And I'm sorry I missed the dress code memo. Somebody actually offered me a fucking $1 walking. Anyway, you look spectacular. Anyway, yes, no, we've been talking a long time. We perform together. I remember when we started, it's like we write songs now, and Michael acts with us. He does all kinds of things. We're going to get into that in just a minute. I don't know how many of you guys have had a chance to read the novel, but it's fucking spectacular. And I was just so happy to be back in the MCU, the Michael Cunningham universe, which is very much like our own, but you know, just slightly different. You know, it's kind of like Monet's Water Lilies, you know what I mean? Which is kind of like, is it an abstraction of what water lilies look like, or is it actually much closer to what water lilies feel like? But it was great. I even found some Easter eggs I'm going to hit you up with. But I want to start with the pandemic, right? Because the book absolutely, spoiler alert, we had a pandemic. But it's April the 5th, 3 years in a row, 2019, 2020, 21. And I think that ever since, a lot of us, it's a conversation all the time, it's like, how much of my inability to remember proper nouns is the pandemic, or did it happen before? You know, how long does time last? And like, when was that? Was that 3 months ago? Is it 2 o'clock in the afternoon? And I think that because everyone's had this major or subtle shift, we can't really judge it. So my question to you is, did you start writing this in the pandemic, or did the pandemic happen to your characters?
yeah, I was well into a very different novel when the pandemic struck, and I thought, there was really no way to work it into the novel I was at least half finished with, without it looking like the pandemic had been stuck in about halfway through. And I don't know, I just found myself thinking, on one hand, how can you write a contemporary novel that does not involve the pandemic? Wouldn't that be a little bit like writing a novel set in London in World War II and not mentioning the Blitz?
Right.
And yet, I didn't want it to be a pandemic book. I don't want to read a pandemic book or write one, if for no other reason than, you know, a novel is about human beings.
Right.
And this was a global catastrophe. It was Godzilla. And I was trying to think about the villagers while thinking about the monster that was attacking the village, and I just couldn't. It took me a while to come up with some way to acknowledge, you know, to bring the pandemic in without it taking over the book. And I came up with this sort of three-part structure. It was, I think you just said this, but for emphasis. It's one day in early April, divided into 3 sections: morning, afternoon, and evening, with the same group of characters, so not all of them are with us all the way. Morning takes place the year before the pandemic, afternoon takes place at the height of the pandemic, and evening takes place in what we're calling the post-pandemic, while acknowledging the fact that it's not really over, but you know, in the here we are in all in one room era.
What I loved about it was that these people were screwed up before the pandemic, which is kind of great. You know, it was like, because you think about it's like, oh, my life was great, and then the pandemic happened. It's like, no, shit was fucked up. It was terrible. I was terrible. Politics was terrible. Everything was already terrible. And one of the things that I found fascinating with this book is the sense of the avatar, right? And we've talked about this a little bit in some of our late night conversations over the last 4 decades. But the idea that there is an actual creation of a false person on Instagram that's the brother and sister who are kind of the main characters create. But there's also this sense, everybody kind of feels like a bit of an avatar. Like everybody can she muster the strength to be who she's supposed to be today? It's like, why didn't he get to be the brother who didn't have to come through? And this idea that everybody's kind of shooting for that. I was going to ask, have you ever done that? Did you do that for research, or have you ever done it for fun? You ever made up somebody? No.
You're smart. Anyway, yeah, one of the characters, a guy named Robbie, creates an avatar on Instagram. Well, I love Instagram. And I think I especially love it for its sort of gigantic quotidian aspects. The idea that you can sort of get these looks at people's regular lives. I'm kind of more into like the pet pictures and the lasagna pictures, just because woof, here we are in this huge world full of people with pets making well, the pets don't make lasagna, but and it occurred to me, I did not actually do it for research. I thought about it. It occurred to me that you could, and I'm sure people already are, sort of borrow other people's photographs and essentially create a person on Instagram. And that is what the guy in the novel does, and then his sister gets into it and it gets a little out of control. But part of what was interesting to me about this guy who creates an avatar is it's not some kind of, his name's Wolf with an E on the end. He's not some kind of superhero, he's not some kind of superstar. He is essentially this guy named Robbie, but the better version of Robbie that Robbie imagines. He's a little more charismatic.
Yes.
He went to medical school rather than not go to medical school. He's popular. He's uber Robbie. He's Robbie with the lights turned up a little brighter and the volume turned on a little higher. And that to me is a much more interesting sort of projection than some fantasy. What if you could create and sustain online your own notion of yourself, but a little better?
Exactly. But it's fascinating, and very early in the book, I think excuse me for fumbling, I think it's like right there, because you introduce it right at the beginning, and it's right here. It says, if Wolf, who's the avatar, if Wolf were real, he'd be the elusive figure at the heart of the story. Is he?
That is a really good question. He kind of
fucking is.
Kind of, because as Dr. Hough, as you mentioned earlier, everybody is a little bit of an avatar.
Yes.
As are some of us.
Mm-hmm.
You project a persona that's very close to you, but not necessarily, it doesn't feel always entirely like you. I teach, and I have a distinct professor persona.
Mm-hmm.
which is not that different, but you know, it kind of is. It's a version. It's
Right.
it's a curated version.
Right.
Like, okay, quick show of hands. Who never does that? You know, of
Right,
course.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or like use, you know, you take 5 pictures instead of 1 picture and you post the one where your butt looks the best, right? Like, why wouldn't you? You know, it's like,
Yeah.
but yeah, exactly. But it was amazing to me because I realized I was reading it, it's that you're writing characters, like you're making up these characters who are making up the character. And it's one of those things when you're writing about other people writing, you realize it's like, what's the difference between the real characters and the fake? But it's like the veil drops a little bit, you know what I mean, in terms of the thing. And I just thought, that's such an interesting experience, you know what I mean? But anyway, I don't want to get too far into it. I know the book just came out today, so you haven't had a chance to read it, but...
It's also, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, because there's...
I am too, I am
we
too,
both are.
of course. I think I was trying to tease that one. And then-
There's something I'd love to talk about, but not tonight, not now.
Exactly. But I also tell you that it's like you are so good at nailing. There's one moment where he's basically saying it's like, you know, the Paxil's kicked in, she's waiting for the Adderall to work, and she's watching Fleabag. And I was like, you know what? Raise your hand if you've watched Fleabag and taken a Paxil or an Adderall in the last 2 years. How many of us? Like, you are so on the fucking nose with that. It was just amazing. I have another kind of open question for you. Are your characters simply 19th century characters trapped in the modern malaise of Manhattan?
Wow.
Aren't they a little bit? I know you love that stuff.
I think probably all of us are 19th century characters from literature dropped into Manhattan in 2023.
You win.
I know. I'm seeing Anna Kareninas. I'm seeing Vronsky's. I think that one of the tricks
I think it
of
is.
living our lives right now is the ways in which it's so easy to feel that you are bigger than your life, that you are more than your life, more than you appear to be. And I don't know, maybe Anna Karenina felt that way too,
But it's kind of like, you know, like all those middle class characters, you know, they had the city house, then they had the house in the country, and they had the thing, and there is kind of that sense that like we think we're supposed to still want that, but it doesn't really fit, and most of us aren't going to be able to do that financially, and so there's this kind of sense, you know what I mean, that kind of disconnect. But it's the narration is unbelievable, and it's so unique to you. I was trying to really come up with a clever idea, but I was talking to Nina and Anne today, who are good friends of ours and very deep readers, and we were talking about the fact that in your books, at least our theory is, the women are more self-aware than the men are, very often. And I think in this book it is quite true, except
Maria's nodding.
Yes, but the women, you know, are able to kind of face the kind of things that, you know, and you only have that one character, kind of the Studley brother of, you know, Dan's brother, Garth, you know, who doesn't really question himself. He just doesn't understand why people can't get with the program, you know what I mean? And it's like the longing for that kind of, because the other characters are just tortured. Even the kids, you wrote, how did you write those kids? There's a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old in the book, and the narration that Michael does, there's the omnipotent narrator, but he also kind of jumps into people's heads. And I almost think of the narrator sometimes as the self-awareness of the characters a little bit. But how did you write the kids so well?
Well, thank you. You know, kind of the way I write any character. One of the I teach writing, and one of the things that I see sometimes is this idea that children are sort of generic, and then we acquire characters as we grow up, and I know that to be untrue. So I really thought about these 2 children the way I think about anybody. My friends Hugh and Claire, who are here tonight, actually recorded their children speaking for me.
Oh,
so I could
nice.
get a certain sense of the cadence. Thank you. And you know, but finding a character is mysterious to me. There are aspects of writing fiction that I say, oh yeah, you do this and you do that, and bingo. And there are other things that I don't really understand myself, and one of them is where characters come from. Sometimes in my writing classes, I have the students do an exercise where you go out into the world, and choose a person, observe that person as unobtrusively as possible, don't get arrested, and write down, come back with a list of at least 20 observable characteristics of that person, but you have to stick to observation. You make no assumptions. If you see somebody getting into a plumbing truck, I guess you could imagine a plumber, but you know, it's the obvious ones. It's like gender or appearance thereof, race, approximate age, stance, if you see them sit down, how do they sit, what are they wearing, and but really no creative writing, no, it's just a list. And we come back to the room and everyone reads their list, and this never fails. About halfway through, a person starts to emerge, a fully formed, living person with a mind and a soul. It's like a conjuring, and you can work on it. You can imagine somebody from the inside out, sort of starting with the little bubble of blue-green light that is our essence, and then get onto our hairdos. But you can also start with the hairdo.
Right.
Yeah, and move in from there.
That's
We are
fantastic.
of the flesh.
I suppose. I mean, it's really amazing what you do, though. And I just, do you mind reading just a little section? I want you guys to see what I'm talking about with the kids. I'm not giving away many details because I don't want to spoil the book for you in the way that it unfolds. But this is from early. I just want, just right here, from Good Morning to the End of the Pink. So this is the kids.
Have to.
Isabel is, I'm sorry, Violet is 5, and Nathan is 10.
Yeah. Good morning, Violet says eagerly. Ever since Violet began disliking her mother a year or so ago, he's been more extravagant in her demonstrations of affection. Does she believe she can summon her mother back again? The engaged and attentive mother, it hasn't been all that long. By the force of her own vehement joyfulness? Why wouldn't she believe that? Nathan deepens his voice as best he can, says, "Hey, Mom. I'm the one who gets it about you, remember? I don't need to fawn over you. I'm your date for the long haul."
That is so beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? I know, it's great. So, one of the other characters in the book is a middle-aged rock musician who had very little success and is now trying to make some sort of comeback. I didn't take that personally. But my question was, it's been 9 years, right, since your last novel, and you did The Wild Swan, the fantastic collection of fairy tales, which we're going to ask about in a minute. But we had the pandemic. I know you did a bunch of Hollywood jobs and the whole thing. But my question is, did you have some sense of worrying about kind of coming back, because you write that stuff really late? It's a nail biter for a lot of us, you know. And I was wondering if there was part of your own personal experience, if you were nervous about coming back into the ring.
Yeah. You know, I find it's a good idea to be nervous about almost everything.
Hallelujah.
I try not to leave many stones unturned. You know, that said, I seem to have reached an age at which I mean, you're never indifferent about whether or not the book is going to be any good, but leave it at that. But no, the problem for me was, what were you doing during those 10 years? A book of stories that sort of went somewhere.
Oh, an audio one. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. But you know, I really got way into another book.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then, the pandemic, and then, I didn't really start writing this until, certainly at least until the vaccine came out, because, you know, a novel is many things. One of the things it is, I think, sort of inherently, is some kind of bottle rocket you're shooting into the future. You know, it has no immediate life. If I could sing, I would sing you a song, and that would be tonight. Don't worry, I'm not going to. But you know what I mean? I mean, a novel is essentially a message stuck in a bottle and thrown into the ocean. And for a while, what with the pandemic and the presidential election and everything on fire, I entertained, I think, maybe my first serious doubts, given all that some of us have been through. I still entertained my first really serious, down to the core doubts about the world not actually being here much longer.
Yeah.
I thought, well, then why would you write a novel?
We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a period of time I was like, who needs another album? You know what I mean? Who really needs, like, and it was weird for a while. You know, it kind of cast things in, but now we realize.
I think I hold strongly to the belief that times of crisis are when we need music and art and fiction and everything
Absolutely.
the most. Because, you know, one of the things writers are doing is we're witnesses to our time. We're part of the historical record. If you wanted to know about 19th century Russia, you would read histories and biographies, but you'd also read Tolstoy and Chekhov and all those people.
Right.
Because they're the ones who record the daily experience of Russia in 1820.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they're the ones who insist that history holds on to people who would otherwise be lost.
Yeah.
Like Napoleon's invasion of Moscow was a really bad idea,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
as you know. And we have thorough records of everything that happened with Napoleon and his genders, and the hundreds of thousands of French soldiers who died on the retreat. But without a fiction writer, you don't get that one soldier who froze to death. Imagining going home, imagining what it would be like. You know, that's without fiction writers, that person is lost, and
Yeah.
that part of this historical record is lost.
No, I think you're correct. Like, we do have a job, but I think it's an honest question to answer. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you know, help, the house is on fire. It's like, I'm coming, Mom, I'm almost done with my poem. You know? Yeah, so I don't think it's like a dishonest question, but I think you're right. I mean, our art is how we do it. You know, we process as best we can. Quick question. So, both the Snow Queen novel from a couple of years ago and this one both start with one of the major characters almost having a vision, this kind of like vision in New York. That in Snow Queen it becomes like a huge thing, but for the character in this book it just becomes another one of the weirdnesses around. Is that related? Was that like an Easter egg, or was that just like, is this like in the Michael Cunningham universe that, you know, like things are about to get crazy for you?
You know, it very much the latter.
I thought so. I did.
Part of what is so, I'm in suddenly sort of in a number of book groups, like a lot of book groups. I don't know how, you know, I just can't say no. And we talk, so we talk in great detail, and of course I talk to my students, but this is a whole other kind of level of analysis of what we're reading, and people will really like hold on to like, what is this about? And I keep thinking, I did a conversation in Austin, Texas 2 nights ago with a former student of mine from Columbia who is now a grown-up person with children in Connecticut and a job at the New Yorker, and the date for the day in 3 parts is April 5th, and he, God bless him, had done enormous research on the historical significance of April 5th. And I couldn't think fast enough on my feet. So, well, yes, that was when Anna Karenina or Anna Christie, or, you know, that was when the Neanderthals discovered fire. I had to tell him, I just like the number 5. It's a nice number, you know. Sometimes the novelist is not as on top of things as you might think.
I do understand that, but I think that like you and I both talked about that moment where like you get far enough in a project where it almost gets like it's better than what you were actually, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're trying to write a book that's smarter than you are.
Correct, exactly. And you know, this is one of those books that reminds me of so much of your writing where, you know, you start with these really simple threads and then all of a sudden very gently, like it's like the spotlight moves and you see this like huge spider web and you talk about the connection of everything. You bring up Christopher Columbus when there's a character that I love, the chess character who is teaching, but also this is in Robbie's class. He's talking about Christopher Columbus and he asked the kids and it runs the gamut from he was wearing a tiara to the natives thought he was bringing magic to, you know, all of these great ideas. But you talk about the fact that there is a chain of history that involves all of those attitudes. Those who benefited from Christopher Columbus's, those who see him as a terrible villain, those whose culture was decimated. And I think that there is that kind of sense of like the history of everything expanding as we go. And I was wondering if you had thoughts, or were you like reading about it, or did you just, this is we're all questioning thoughts we've had for a long time.
I think it's, well, I have to say, by the way, there's a remark that Robbie makes, Columbus, he was, after all, a mass murderer financed by the Inquisition. My Spanish translator would not translate it.
Really?
He said, "You have prescribed to the black legend." Anyway, but that
is really funny.
More on the black legend another time. You know, number 5 is arbitrary, which it kind of was, but I feel like there's the intentional, there's the unconscious, and then there's a genuinely random. And I think it's by the sort of intersection of the three that gives a novel its life. Too much randomness, and it's you know, it's like it just scatters all over the place. But too much intention, and it's sort of alive, unalive, like a little Swiss ballerina popping out of a music box.
Right.
So it's really a question of sort of trying to steer the three dogs, if you will, into roughly the same direction, with the understanding that they're three different dogs.
Yeah. Well, also, we were talking in the car today coming up that, like, for you, like, the triangulation, like, 3 parts, you know what I mean, is kind of your Fibonacci sequence, or it's kind of your golden mean, like your Da Vinci. You have either 3 sections, or you have 3 characters, or Specimen Days, you have 3 stories. But that somehow, like, you really kind of just start and explode out of this experience. And I was wondering if that's something that's conscious, or is it just a part of one weird tick of your brain?
I would love to talk to you about the number.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very brief pedantic interlude. Then we'll get to more jokes and hilarity. But okay, the number 3 is just ubiquitous. The Holy Trinity, the 3 Magi, the 3 acts in a play, and as it turns out, for a hurricane to form, there need to be 3 storm fronts. 2 will just sort of blow along. At the atomic level, an atom of hydrogen has only a nucleus and an electron, and they can predict perfectly how it will behave. An atom of helium has a nucleus and 2 electrons, and there's no predicting what it will do. That's 3. Starting from 1. 2, I don't have anything to do. You could take two objects. Thank you. Here's my, and if we could send this bottle cap to San Francisco, it would still be possible to draw a straight line between the 2 bottle caps. When you add a 3rd element, endless combinations are possible. Yeah. That's why we like the number 3.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Ooh, had a little professorial there. It comes out sometimes. It's a little Tourette's-like.
I was going to ask you if the those early pieces about, both the class that, the wonderful class that Chess is in, when, she finally kind of is talking about literature in her class, and she asks one of her students what he thinks. She's seen him on the phone, and he says, white people suck, and she says, I can't argue with that, goodbye. But I was wondering, did your teaching creep into this a little bit? Because it was kind of a lot of really seemingly insightful stuff that you may have just made up, but, I don't know.
No, I mean, I do teach, and you kind of have to use what the world shows you as your material, or that's what you know of the world. Chess's class is much more sort of obstreperous than my classes tend to be. I love teaching for many reasons. I teach 2 seminars, a sort of literature one and a writing one at Yale. So it's 12 very smart young people. And one of the sort of funny things that I hadn't really expected when I started was in the literature class, we read about 30 stories in the course of the semester, all stories, because I want us to read things in their entirety. And from year to year, with one crop after another of brilliant, incisive, exquisitely prepared young readers, the story that was a big hit last year is a total bomb the next year. There's no, they're like a nucleus and with 2 electrons. And what I like about that, and I encourage them to like or dislike, but then we have to talk about how the story failed you, what did you want that this story did?
Right.
So we don't just let it go at that. But it is a sort of it's a sort of useful, annual, visceral reminder that no 2 people read the same story. That the writer writes the story, and then the reader writes the story, and the kids from last year who loved the Karen Russell story were not right, and the kids who found it pretentious and overly whimsical were not wrong. But I love that about it. It's just this constant exposure to, you say tomato, I say tomato, here's a story, write it, now read it and write it in your own mind.
Wow. Well, you certainly do that. Before we take a couple of questions, because we're going to try to move on so you guys get a chance to ask anything you want. You have a wonderful, whenever I would ask you, it's like, oh, have you finished the novel? And you have this, like, the way that you actually describe the process of the final draft. And I was wondering if you'd share that with people, that you never actually finish a novel.
Oh, yeah. Well, first there is the question of the impossibly great novel that's been floating over your head. I mean, literally impossibly great. Not only too great for me to write, but kind of too great for anybody to write. Because it uses language in never before seen ways. It somehow contains whale songs, the constellations, and when you turn a page of feelings or wafts up at you from the page itself. And yeah, I mean, I don't literally expect to write that, but you know what I mean. You have to negotiate the discrepancy between the book you're able to write and that book. It's why I am so. I love translators. Even the Spanish guy who refuses to translate because I believe in the Black Legend. Because I realized that even the original is still a sort of rough translation of the more fabulous, bright, dark, comic, tragic book you would hope to summon down from the sky. It starts as a translation and then it is further translated. And also, this is a very good moment to introduce my brilliant editor, Andy Ward. Andy, thank you. Who cracked the whip in the best possible sense. And you get 3 sets of page proofs. First one, you can pretty much do anything. I just think they should be talking chihuahuas. I don't know why. And you can do that. And the second set, you have to be a little more, kind of have to keep it more or less as, you still have a fair amount of liberty. And the third set, that's it. And you have to not screw up the page count. You move a word here and there. And after I handed it in, having had 3 whole chances to do anything I wanted, I almost called Andy. Andy, I don't think I ever told you this. I almost called you a couple weeks after and said, I know this is really forbidden, but could I just have one more crack? Because I've thought of a few phrases that I think really have to go in there, but I didn't. Well, partly because I wouldn't do that to him. I might do that to you, actually. But, because I realized that even if Andy had said, yes, you can make a few changes still, I would want to call him up a month later with the same question. And for better and for worse, the finished book simply represents the point at which you acknowledge it's the best you can do. And you don't want to publish it before it feels like that, but once you really understand that this is heartfelt, and it has some good things, I think really good things. And I don't want to get carried away with the self-abnegation, but you also feel like, as writers and readers and both, we're all kind of learning it as we go along. And a novel is among its, plus of course, meant to be sold to the movies, is a sort of, I don't know how to put this together, a sort of shared chronicle of the writers and the readers' attempt to live in the world and learn something about it, however imperfect our learning is, if that makes any sense at all.
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Well, the book is great and I love you. Do you guys have any questions? Anybody want to put them on the spot? Talk to the mic.
Are you going back to the other novel that you stopped during?
Am I going back to the other novel?
I'm hopeful for another one.
Well, God is willing. I will write another one. I'm not sure if it's going to be that one. Only because, I found that a novel has a sort of shelf life. It's a very like Velveeta. It's like a really long shelf life. But you still, even if when we're talking years, you still have to quote unquote finish it. We just talk about that. You have to finish it before it becomes a novel you used to want to write. And it might be perfectly good, but you know what I mean? You at a certain point you cease to be the person who wanted to write that book. And you may find that you just have to let it go. Like almost like, I don't like the analogy between books and lovers, but here's one anyway. The way sometimes you just have to break up with somebody even though it's not going badly, it's just not going,
Anybody?
We love questions.
You were talking at the very beginning about, the impetus for writing the novel, sort of experiencing the pandemic and comparing it to what's in London. And there seems to be a real lack of novels about the pandemic. Like, there aren't really that many that come to mind, which is sort of strange when you consider that it was such a mass global event that we all experienced. And I was curious if you could talk about why you think it is that writers are trepidatious about writing novels about the pandemic, or if it's something else, the publishing industry isn't interested in them, or what's up with the lack of pandemic novels?
There are a certain number of them out, and as I understand it, I'm sure there are people in the room who know more about this than I do. There's a bunch on the way. I think what is usually the case is that it takes a certain number of years for writers to feel like they have, I guess what I'll call perspective on, like the Vietnam novels didn't come out right away. I don't know if the 9/11 novels ever came out. But you know what I mean. I think there is usually a sort of lull, if you will, or a silence while this catastrophic event sort of begins to turn into history, even all moist and bleeding as it may still be. The pandemic, I don't know if any, well, how can you compare one catastrophe to another, but this one got everyone on the whole planet. So I think one finds oneself writing about a world in which there's no place to go, there's no population to go to and write a pandemic-free novel. So you're kind of screwed either way, and you do the best you can. But yeah, pandemic novel is already up. I'm seeing it as a genre. Got on the ground floor of that one.
It's right, like Slaughterhouse 5 and Catch 22 came out after a period of time, and the way that Altman used MASH to write, so I do think that's an interesting.
Other people probably know this, like War and Peace is a historical novel.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that, but we're nerds.
Yeah, but it just takes a while for the light to reach our planet.
Exactly. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Comments? We got one over here. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
On the pandemic theme, how did it feel revisiting like another pandemic, given that you covered the HIV crisis with your earlier work?
How did it feel? How did it feel to write during my second pandemic? Certainly hopeful that there's not a third coming along, but yeah, it's just the way the dice fell. I kind of started writing fiction during the AIDS epidemic, pandemic, and here we are again. And in both times, I have felt like we've got to find a way to write about this and portray it without, again, losing the French soldier on the field of snow, without losing the person with AIDS and the person taking care of the person with AIDS and the parents of the person who won't have anything to do with the person with AIDS. It's just what you do. It's just what you do if you were born in, as they say, interesting times.
Hugh?
Yeah.
I wondered if when you went back to work on this novel, or just when you went back to work, having obviously spent a lot of time working alone over the years, then returning after that period when we all spent a lot of time on our own, whether that experience of solitude was different.
Yeah, did everybody hear that? It was my once, writers live a life of solitude, mostly, and then suddenly everybody was living a life of solitude. What was it like, sort of returning? Is that about right?
Yeah.
Well, it's a slightly terrible thing to say, but as my writer friends say, on a day-to-day basis, nothing changed that much. You were home by yourself before, you're home by yourself during, and well, my husband Kenny was with me, but I think everybody here is more than qualified to offer each our own answer to the question, sort of, how is it now? How is it now?
How is it now?
I don't, I feel like I've talked a lot. I would really love it if anybody would sort of talk just other than me about how is it now? Would anyone do it? Yeah, Leslie. You want the mic?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I just want to say, I started reading Elizabeth Strout's Lucy by the Sea, and I've always loved all her books.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, and it was like she and her husband had to leave because of the pandemic and go up, the Met, wherever. And it's like, I do not want to read this book.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. I do not want to read books. And like when you start reading short stories in the New Yorker or something, and it's about, you know, I just like, I do not want to read it. I want to get over it, and that's it. And so.
Time to move on, right? Yeah, please.
You were talking about the significance of three, and there were three major events. It wasn't only the pandemic. We had an insufferable administration, and then we had the Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
And then, so, I don't know, everyone else was through that. You know, everybody was experiencing that in different ways. And I think, you know, to use your physics analogy, I think some of us are still mentally scattered about it all.
Mm-hmm.
Could everybody hear that? Yeah. 3 or more. I mean, then there's the fires. Then there's
Oh.
Yeah.
And to
yeah.
Leslie's point as well, it's kind of like, you know, that I was talking to Nina, it's kind of like at the current moment there are people who are following the news like moment by moment by moment because that's how they can process what's going on. There are people who are not watching the news because that's like, you know, people, so it's kind of like, and that's been going on for a while now, but there is that sense that it's like I'm not ready to, you know, the movie that you know is going to just be terrible, sad, just fucking sad, and some days it's like, nope. I'll put on Ab Fab again and you get drunk.
It's time to move on to the party.
Let's do it.
But thank you. We got
You were fantastic. Give it up for my everybody. I think there's 3 drinks, I think. It was the last time I heard 3 drinks.
Yeah, everyone has drinks. Welcome to the after party. We have food. Yep, I know. There's food, there's drinks. We're open until 10, so we hope you'll hang out for a little while. Michael is going to sign books for us over in Essays in Creative Nonfiction. And then Billy's going to play some music for us. We're going to move some furniture. So yeah, hang out. Thanks again, everybody. And
Thank you guys so very much.